Hey everyone, getting ready for Mr. Martin's biology class.
Always a good time.
Well, today we're going to do a deep dive into something you'll probably be tested on, the diversity of organisms.
Ooh, yeah. That's a big one.
It's way cooler than it might sound at first, though, I promise.
Why?
But before we get into all the amazing ways life on Earth expresses itself,
Right.
we got to tackle the basics. What is the species anyway? I mean, we use the word all the time.
Yeah.
But how do scientists actually define it?
Well, you'd think it'd be pretty straightforward, right?
You'd think so?
But it's actually, it's trickier than you might expect.
Really?
Yeah. One way to think about it is through the morphological species concept. It's all about physical traits. So, like, think the stripes on a tiger or
Okay.
the shape of a bird's beak.
I see.
Carl Linnaeus, the father of taxonomy, he used this approach to classify organisms way back when.
So if it looks different, it's a different species.
You got it. Well, at first that makes sense,
Yeah.
but I bet there are some tricky exceptions.
Oh, I'm sure. Like, what about organisms that look super similar but can't breed?
Exactly. Or what about organisms that reproduce asexually,
Oh, right.
like bacteria?
Yeah.
That's where we get the biological species concept.
Okay.
This definition, it focuses on the ability to interbreed
Right.
and produce fertile offspring.
Okay.
So, like, a horse and a donkey can make a mule, right?
Right. A mule.
But mules can't have babies of their own. So, different species.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I'm already thinking, what about fossils? We can't watch them mate or anything. And speaking of things that make you go,
Yeah.
what about chimpanzees and humans? I mean, we share a lot of DNA,
So much.
but we're obviously different species.
You're hitting on some really important points there. The biological species concept, it isn't perfect. And those examples, they highlight its limitations.
Okay.
Take chimps and humans.
Yeah.
We share about 98.8% of our DNA.
But that tiny little
1.2% difference.
that accounts for all the traits that make us human. Think about language, complex thought, even our ability to walk upright.
Yeah, and that's crazy.
It's really a testament to the power of small genetic variations. You know, they can drive big evolutionary changes.
That is mind-blowing. It makes you wonder how scientists keep track of all these organisms, with their different definitions and breeding habits and genetic quirks and all that.
Well, imagine you had to describe every single little detail of an organism every time you talked about it.
Oh my God.
That would be a mouthful.
It'd be impossible.
Right. Thankfully, we've got something called the binomial system of nomenclature. It's like a universal nickname for every living thing.
Okay.
It's simple. Genus, species. Like Homo sapiens for us.
Oh, right. So
It's-
like a first and last name.
Exactly.
Okay, that's way easier than like listing every single characteristic. But there's got to be more to it than just like convenience, right?
You're right. This system also reveals evolutionary relationships.
Oh, how so?
So organisms grouped under the same genus, they're more closely related. For example, you've got Canis lupus familiaris, which is your friendly dog,
By dog.
and Canis lupus, the gray wolf. Same genus, hinting at a shared ancestor. It's like a family tree written in scientific names.
So if species are like chapters in the book of life, what's the whole book?
The genome,
The genome.
the complete instruction manual for building and maintaining an organism. Every single cell in your body contains a copy of your entire genome. It's a blueprint written in the language of DNA.
Wow. Now we're getting to the really interesting stuff. We hear about genome size a lot and how some organisms have surprisingly large genomes.
Oh, yeah.
But does size really matter?
That's a great question. You might think that a bigger genome means a more complex organism, but it's not always so straightforward.
Really?
No, like some amoebas, for example, have genomes that are hundreds of times larger than the human genome,
Whoa.
but they're just single-celled organisms.
That's crazy.
It turns out it's not just about the size of the genome. It's about the content and how it's organized. Think of it like a library.
Okay.
A huge library doesn't mean it has more valuable books, right? It might be full of duplicates or outdated editions.
Okay, so what makes some genomes so large if it's not about complexity?
One factor is something called non-coding DNA. Remember, genes are the regions of DNA that code for proteins, which do all the heavy lifting in your cells. But a large chunk of a genome can be made up of sequences that don't code for proteins directly. These non-coding regions, they can play important roles in regulating gene expression, but they can also be remnants of ancient viral infections
Oh, wow.
or even just repetitive sequences.
So it's like those extra pages in a book. Some might be important, but others are just blank.
That's a great way to put it. But how do we visualize all this genetic information? Well, imagine taking a picture of all your chromosomes lined up neatly. That's called a karyogram.
Wow, so we can actually see an organism's chromosome.
We can.
That's like something straight out of a sci-fi movie.
It's pretty cool.
What can we learn from these karyograms?
Karyograms can tell us a lot. Like, we can see the number of chromosomes,
Okay.
the size and the shape of each chromosome, and we can even spot abnormalities.
Oh, wow.
It's a powerful tool for diagnosing genetic disorders in humans and also for studying evolutionary relationships between different species. Remember how we talked about humans having 46 chromosomes and chimps having 48?
Yeah.
Well, by comparing karyotypes, scientists have found evidence that chromosome 2 in humans, it actually resulted from the fusion of 2 chromosomes found in chimpanzees.
Whoa.
It's like a puzzle piece from our shared evolutionary past.
That's amazing. It's like looking back in time through our chromosomes.
Mm-hmm.
But how do scientists create these karyograms?
It involves some pretty cool techniques, but the basic idea is to capture the chromosomes when they're condensed.
Okay.
Easiest to see. They treat cells with chemicals to stop them from dividing during a specific stage of the cell cycle, called metaphase. Then, they spread them out on a slide
Okay.
and stain them with dyes that bind to DNA. And then they can take pictures
Oh, wow.
and arrange the chromosomes into a karyogram.
That's incredible. It sounds like a super meticulous process.
It is.
But the insights we can get from a single snapshot of chromosomes are just remarkable. It really highlights the just incredible diversity that exists at the genetic level.
Exactly. And speaking of incredible diversity, have you heard of whole genome sequencing?
I have, but isn't it still like super expensive?
It used to be, but the technology is advancing so rapidly and the costs are plummeting. Sequencing entire genomes is getting faster and more accessible all the time.
Wow.
This opens up a whole bunch of incredible possibilities in fields like medicine,
Right.
evolutionary biology, even conservation.
Gosh, this is really getting me pumped for Mr. Martin's class.
Mm.
Every time we peel back a layer of this biodiversity onion, there's another layer of fascinating complexity underneath.
That's what makes it so exciting, and we've only just scratched the surface.
Huh.
There's so much more to discover in this incredible world of biological diversity. Welcome back to our deep dive into biodiversity.
Whoa, that was a lot of info.
It is, right? Before the break,
Yeah.
we were just getting into the amazing world of whole genome sequencing.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It's incredible to think we can now read the entire genetic blueprint of an organism.
It really is. It's like having a secret decoder ring for like the language of life.
That's a great way to put it.
With all this new genetic information at our fingertips, are there any limitations to that biological species concept we talked about? You know, the one about interbreeding?
Oh, that's a great question. The biological species concept, it's a useful tool, but like any tool,
Yeah.
it has its limits.
Right.
Remember those bacteria we talked about?
Yeah, the ones that reproduce asexually.
Yeah. So they don't fit neatly into that interbreeding definition,
Right.
but they can still exchange genetic material through processes like horizontal gene transfer.
Horizontal gene transfer.
Yeah, it's like swapping recipes for building proteins and other cellular components.
So bacteria are constantly sharing genetic information, even if they're not, like, technically mating.
Pretty much. And that's not the only challenge. The biological species concept, it also relies on observing breeding behavior,
Right.
which is impossible for extinct organisms. We can't exactly watch dinosaurs mate, right, to figure out if they're separate species.
True. So how do scientists deal with these exceptions? Are there other ways to define a species?
There are. Scientists are constantly refining our understanding of species and developing new tools to classify organisms.
Oh, cool. Like what?
Well, one approach is the phylogenetic species concept,
Okay.
which focuses on evolutionary relationships and shared ancestry. It defines a species as the smallest group of individuals that share a common ancestor and can be distinguished from other such groups.
Okay.
Think of it like building a family tree for organisms,
I like that.
tracing their lineage back through time.
So it's like using genetics to piece together the history of life on Earth.
Exactly.
It's amazing. But let's zoom back in for a second
Right.
and revisit those karyotypes we talked about earlier. I remember you saying it's like a genetic snapshot, right?
Yeah, precisely. A karyotype is the complete set of chromosomes in an organism. And a karyogram is like a picture of those chromosomes all lined up neatly. We can see the number, the size, the shape of each chromosome, which can reveal a lot about an organism's genetic makeup.
So it's like a genetic fingerprint that can help us identify species and even detect abnormalities.
Ah.
Could this be helpful for understanding the diversity within a species, too?
Absolutely. Karyotyping, it's used in tons of applications, from diagnosing genetic disorders in humans
Okay.
to studying evolutionary relationships between species. And you're right, it can also reveal variations within a species. Remember how we talked about those tiny little genetic differences between humans?
Yeah.
Some of those differences, they can show up in our karyotypes.
So even though we share a lot of our DNA, those tiny variations can make a big difference.
They can.
It's fascinating how much we can learn from just a single snapshot of
I
chromosomes.
know, it's amazing.
But I gotta admit, looking at a karyogram, it's a little bit like deciphering a secret code.
It kind of is, yeah.
How do scientists actually create these images?
Well, it does involve some sophisticated techniques, but the basic process is actually pretty straightforward.
Okay.
Scientists, they'll typically start with a sample of cells, like blood cells or skin cells,
Right.
and they treat those cells with chemicals to stop them from dividing during a specific stage of the cell cycle. It's called metaphase.
Okay.
And that's when the chromosomes are condensed and easiest to see under a microscope.
So it's like freezing the cells in action so we can get a clear view of their chromosomes.
Exactly.
I bet that makes things a lot easier.
It does. Once the cells are arrested in metaphase, they're spread out on a microscope slide,
Okay.
and they're stained with dyes that bind to DNA. And this makes the chromosomes visible under a microscope, allowing scientists to take pictures and arrange them into a karyogram.
That's amazing. It's like a combination of art and science.
It is.
You know, using these techniques to create these visual representations of an organism's genetic blueprint.
I like that. And as technology continues to advance,
Right.
we're discovering even more about the incredible diversity of genomes and karyotypes across a vast spectrum of life. Each species, even each individual, has its own unique story written in its DNA.
It is incredible to think that something as tiny and invisible as DNA holds the key to understanding the vast diversity of life on Earth.
It really is.
But speaking of the bigger picture,
Yeah.
why is understanding biodiversity so important? Like, why should we care about all this amazing array of life on Earth?
That's a fundamental question, and the answer, it's multifaceted. Biodiversity, it's essential for the health of our planet and the well-being of all living things, including us, humans.
Right.
You know, ecosystems with high biodiversity, they're more resilient to environmental change, they're more productive, and they provide a wider range of services that benefit humans. Think of it like a complex web of life,
Okay.
where each species plays a vital role.
So it's like a giant puzzle. Every piece, no matter how small, is important for the overall picture.
Precisely. Losing a species, it disrupts the balance of an ecosystem.
Right.
It can have cascading effects throughout the food web. Imagine a forest, right?
Okay.
And a key pollinator disappears.
Oh, no.
The plants that depend on that pollinator,
Yeah.
they might struggle to reproduce.
Wow.
And that impacts the animals that rely on those plants for food, and so on and so on.
Right.
It's a very delicate balance.
It's amazing and also a little bit daunting to think about how interconnected everything is. But beyond, like, the ecological importance, isn't there also a sense of wonder and inspiration that comes from biodiversity?
Absolutely. The sheer variety of life on Earth.
Yeah.
It's a testament to the power of evolution and the incredible adaptations that have allowed organisms to thrive in every corner of our planet. From the depths of the ocean to the tops of mountains, life finds a way.
Right.
And that's something to celebrate.
It really is. It's like a never-ending story of survival and innovation, with each species playing its own unique role. It makes you realize that us humans, we're just one small part of this incredible web of life.
We are. And that realization comes with the responsibility, right?
Yeah.
To protect and conserve this biodiversity. The more we understand about the diversity of life, the better equipped we are to appreciate it, safeguard it, and ensure that future generations can experience the same wonder and awe that we feel when we contemplate the vast tapestry of life on Earth.
That's a powerful message. It makes you realize that we're all connected. And our actions have consequences for the entire web of life. But I gotta admit, sometimes it feels kind of overwhelming to think about the sheer number of species on Earth. Scientists estimate there could be millions, maybe even billions that we haven't even discovered yet.
It's true. We've only just begun to explore the vast tapestry of life on Earth.
Right.
But that's what makes it so exciting.
I know.
There's still so much to learn and discover. Think about all the potential for new medicines,
Right.
new technologies, new solutions to some of the world's most pressing problems. We just need to keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep our sense of wonder alive.
I love that keep our sense of wonder alive. It's like Mr. Martin always says, the more you learn about biology, the more amazing the world becomes.
He's absolutely right.
Yeah.
Mr. Martin, he clearly understands the profound importance of biodiversity, and I'm sure he's eager to share that passion with his students, inspire them to become stewards of our planet's incredible natural heritage.
Speaking of students, I know we've been throwing around a lot of technical terms
They
today.
have.
Let's take a moment to break down some key concepts that might be helpful for anyone studying biodiversity, especially in Mr. Martin's class.
Great idea. Let's start with the term taxon.
Texan.
It's a simple way to refer to any group of organisms that are classified together based on shared characteristics. For example, the genus Homo, which includes all species of humans, that's a taxon. It's a way of categorizing the incredible diversity of life into manageable groups.
So it's like a label for a branch on the tree of life,
Yeah.
like a family name for a group of related organisms.
Exactly. And the science of classifying organisms into these groups, that's called taxonomy.
Taxonomy.
Taxonomists, they use a hierarchical system to organize organisms into increasingly inclusive groups,
Okay.
starting with species
Right.
and moving up through genus, family, order, class, phylum, kingdom, and domain.
It's like a giant filing system for all life on Earth.
It is.
But how do taxonomists decide which characteristics to use for classification? It seems like there are endless possibilities.
You're right. Choosing the right characteristics, it's a key challenge in taxonomy. Historically, taxonomists relied heavily on morphology,
Morphology. Okay.
observable features like body shape, size, and color. But with advancements in molecular biology, we
Yeah.
can now use genetic data to build more accurate and robust classifications.
So it's like we're getting a clearer picture of the tree of life thanks to the power of genetics.
Yeah, exactly.
We can see the branches and connections more clearly than ever before.
We can. Genetic data is revolutionizing our understanding of biodiversity. It's helping us to resolve ambiguities in traditional classifications
Right.
and appreciate the interconnectedness of all living things in a whole new way.
This is all so fascinating. I feel like I'm gaining a whole new appreciation for the complexity and beauty of life on Earth.
I'm glad to hear that. Understanding biodiversity, it's not just about memorizing facts. It's about developing a sense of wonder and appreciation for the natural world.
Oh, yeah.
It's about recognizing our place in the grand scheme of things and embracing our responsibility to care for our planet and all its inhabitants.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been on quite a journey exploring the amazing world of biodiversity.
It has been a wild ride.
It really has. From defining species to unraveling the mysteries of genomes and karyotypes, we've covered so much ground.
We have.
And you know what? Prepping for Mr. Martin's class has never felt so exciting.
It's true. The more you learn about biodiversity, the more fascinating the world becomes.
Absolutely. And we still got some intriguing territory to cover. Remember we talked about genome size and how bigger isn't always better?
Oh, yeah.
Those amoebas with their massive genomes blew my mind.
They're pretty wild.
If it's not just about size, what makes a genome complex?
Well, think back to that library analogy. A large library doesn't necessarily mean it has more valuable information, right?
Right.
It's about the content and how it's organized. One factor that contributes to larger genome sizes is the presence of non-coding DNA.
Non-coding DNA.
These are stretches of DNA that don't directly code for proteins.
So it's like having extra pages in the instruction manual that might not be actively used. But I thought, like, all DNA was important.
You're right to think that DNA is crucial, but not all of it directly translates into building proteins. Some non-coding regions have regulatory functions, controlling when and where genes are turned on or off. Others might be remnants of ancient viral infections,
Oh, wow.
like genetic fossils embedded in our DNA.
That's incredible. So even junk DNA can tell us something about an organism's evolutionary history.
Exactly.
It's like a hidden library of genetic secrets.
I like that. It's a reminder that evolution isn't always about efficiency, but about building on what's already there. Sometimes those seemingly useless bits of DNA might become important later on, providing raw material for new adaptations.
That's so cool. It makes you realize that even within a species, there's an incredible amount of diversity at the genetic level.
Absolutely. And this diversity is what makes evolution possible.
Right.
Remember, those tiny variations in our DNA are what make each of us unique. And in a population, those variations can mean the difference between surviving a disease, adapting to a changing environment, or passing on those traits to the next generation.
It makes you appreciate how powerful those small genetic differences can be. Speaking of which, we talked about whole genome sequencing and how it's becoming more accessible.
Right?
I bet this has huge implications for, like, healthcare. Right?
You bet. Imagine a future where doctors can look at your entire genome and tailor treatments to your specific genetic makeup. That's the promise of personalized medicine.
So it's like having a personalized health roadmap, helping doctors make more informed decisions about, diagnosis, treatment, even prevention.
Precisely. For example, let's say you have a genetic variant that makes you more susceptible to a certain type of cancer.
Okay.
Your doctor could recommend more frequent screenings or lifestyle changes to reduce your risk.
I see.
Or imagine someone needs a specific medication. By analyzing their genome, doctors could predict how their body will metabolize the drug and adjust the dosage, or choose an alternative medication to avoid potential side effects.
That's incredible. It seems like whole genome sequencing could revolutionize healthcare, leading to more effective and targeted treatments.
I think so.
But are there any, downsides to this technology?
That's a really important question. While whole genome sequencing holds immense promise, it also raises ethical considerations. We need to think about who has access to this information, how we protect patient privacy, and how we ensure that this technology is used responsibly and equitably. It's a powerful tool, and like any powerful tool, it needs to be handled with care.
You're right. We have to be careful. It's important to have those conversations and make sure we're using this technology ethically. It's like Mr. Martin always says, with great power comes great responsibility.
He's got a point. The future of healthcare and, indeed, the future of our understanding of biodiversity,
Yeah,
it's intertwined with these technological advancements.
it is.
It's an exciting time to be studying biology, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. This deep dive has been incredible.
It has.
From the smallest variations in DNA to the grand interconnectedness of life on Earth, it's clear that there's so much more to explore and understand.
There is.
And you know what? I feel like I'm ready to ace Mr. Martin's class.
I have no doubt you will. Remember, keep asking questions, keep exploring, and never lose that sense of wonder about the natural world.
That's great advice. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into biodiversity. We hope you've enjoyed the journey and learned something new along the way.
Until next time, keep exploring and keep wondering.